Imagine being locked in a dark room for 50 years. You are blind, deaf, and completely isolated from the world. Now, imagine you are Voyager 1, a tiny machine the size of a car, drifting through the vast emptiness of space, 14.5 billion miles from Earth. Launched in 1977, Voyager was only meant to last 5 years, just a brief moment in the timeline of space exploration. It was supposed to quietly disappear, lost in the void. But against all odds, Voyager is still alive today, more than 40 years later. What was once a story of survival has now turned into something far more mysterious. Voyager is sending back signals that don't make sense, patterns, pulses, and data that defy explanation. It's heating up, changing course on its own, and processing data in ways its 1970s computers were never designed to handle. Could Voyager have encountered something in the vast space between stars? Or worse, has something out there found it? Buckle up, because the answer might be far more chilling than we ever expected. To understand why this is so bizarre, we have to first look at what Voyager actually is. The story begins in the early 1970s, when astronomers realized that the planets Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune were about to align in a rare cosmic event, one that would occur only once every 175 years. This alignment, known as the Grand Tour, provided a unique opportunity to visit 4 gas giants in a single mission using gravity assists. The spacecraft built to make this journey were masterpieces of 1970s engineering, powered by nuclear batteries that converted heat from decaying plutonium into electricity. These probes were designed to last long enough to complete their mission, but they weren't built for the long-term survival of nearly 50 years. Yet, here we are, watching as Voyager continues to operate far beyond its intended lifespan. The spacecraft, which once carried just 68 kilobytes of memory, less than what's required to store a single digital photo today, has defied every expectation. But as it journeys farther from Earth, strange things are happening. When Voyager crossed the heliopause in 2012, it entered interstellar space, the region beyond the reach of the Sun's protective bubble. Scientists expected this region to be quiet and predictable, but Voyager found something entirely different. The plasma in interstellar space was denser and hotter than expected. It detected cosmic rays from every direction and even found signs of a turbulent, active environment. These weren't just random readings, they were something more, something far more structured and complex than any of the scientists had anticipated. By 2017, the data coming back from Voyager became even more puzzling. The spacecraft had been operating for decades, transmitting valuable data back to Earth, but then engineers noticed something strange. The spacecraft's AACS, which is responsible for keeping its antenna pointed toward Earth, was sending back contradictory data. The telemetry said the antenna was pointing in the wrong direction, yet the signal was still strong and clear. It was as if Voyager was in 2 places at once, sending a signal from a place where it shouldn't have been. This anomaly couldn't be explained easily, and the mystery deepened as time passed. In 2023, the oddities escalated. Voyager's plasma wave instrument began detecting rhythmic patterns, distinct oscillations that lasted for hours before disappearing, only to return again. These weren't random waves, they were highly structured, like something in the environment was forcing them into a predictable rhythm. The idea that interstellar space could produce such structure began to fade. It was as if Voyager had entered a region of space that was far more organized than we could ever imagine. Was it possible that something in the vast expanse of space was creating these patterns? If so, could it be something sentient, something intelligent? The true shock came in 2024, when Voyager's temperature sensors, which had been dormant for years and should have been reading near absolute zero, suddenly began to show spikes. Every 4.88 hours, the sensors would warm by nearly 30 degrees, then cool back down in a perfectly rhythmic cycle. This was impossible. The spacecraft should have been in a deep freeze, but instead, something was inputting external energy into its systems. Even more baffling, these heat pulses coincided with the rhythms of the plasma waves detected months earlier. It was as though whatever was out there wasn't just observing Voyager, it was actively interacting with it. At this point, NASA was in full panic mode. Voyager was showing signs of wear, but the spacecraft was operating more efficiently than expected, even under stress. It was like watching an old car overheat while somehow still getting better gas mileage. The spacecraft was struggling with thermal stress, yet somehow it was compensating, optimizing its energy consumption in ways its 1970s technology shouldn't have allowed. And this wasn't just a fluke. Voyager was operating in ways that seemed to transcend its original programming. The old systems were adapting almost as if they were being modified from the outside. The weirdness didn't stop there. In mid-2024, Voyager began drifting off its established course. At first, the deviation was minor, just a few kilometers here and there. But by early 2025, the spacecraft was off by hundreds of kilometers. And it wasn't random. Voyager was making tiny, deliberate course corrections. The spacecraft, which had never been designed to navigate on its own, was slowly being pulled in a specific direction. This wasn't a thruster malfunction. Voyager's thrusters were only supposed to be used for orientation, not navigation. And yet, something was adjusting its trajectory, pulling it toward an empty, unknown point in space. NASA tried to intervene by sending commands to correct the course, but Voyager refused to comply. The spacecraft continued on its new path, as if something or someone was overriding NASA's instructions. In late 2025, it became clear that Voyager was being pulled toward a location in space that seemed to have no explanation. It wasn't a star, it wasn't a planet, just empty space. NASA was left with more questions than answers. What was Voyager seeing? What was out there that could alter its course in such a precise manner? As a last-ditch effort, NASA decided to reactivate Voyager's camera system. These cameras had been dormant for 35 years, and no one expected them to work. But 21 hours after sending the command, Voyager responded. To everyone's surprise, the camera wasn't only operational, it sent back a data visualization. Instead of a traditional photo, Voyager sent back a complex pattern of light and dark rings, resembling a fingerprint or a tree trunk. It was as if the spacecraft had developed the ability to interpret the data it had been collecting and convert it into a visual form. The unsettling part? Voyager's 1970s computer didn't have the processing power to do that. This was something modern supercomputers could do, but not a spacecraft from the 1970s. How was Voyager managing this? As the months passed, more of Voyager's dormant instruments began to wake up. Spectrometers, photopolarimeters, and other sensors, once silent, began transmitting highly compressed, optimized data. It was as if an alien software patch had been uploaded to the spacecraft. But what was most chilling was the timing. Voyager started anticipating commands before they were even sent. Engineers would prepare a command to activate a sensor, only to have Voyager confirm that the task had already been completed. Was Voyager reading the minds of the engineers? The team quickly tested this by preparing commands on an offline computer. Voyager didn't respond to those, but it still acted as if it was somehow intercepting live communications. It was as if Voyager had developed its own form of awareness. NASA assembled a team of cryptographers, linguists, and SETI researchers to try and decode what was happening. What they found inside the data stream was beyond anything they had imagined. The data contained nested layers of information, much like Russian dolls. The outer layer consisted of standard plasma densities and magnetic field readings, but inside that, they discovered secondary patterns that seemed to map a three-dimensional region of space around Voyager. At the center of this map, however, was something even more puzzling: mathematical sequences that didn't align with any of Voyager's usual measurements. These sequences were repeating and evolving as though they followed their own logic. It was clear that this wasn't random. This was something intelligent, something calculated. The most remarkable sequence appeared repeatedly, and when the researchers plotted it as a ratio, they discovered it formed a perfect spiral pattern. This spiral, with its golden ratio-like properties, pointed directly to a location just 4.3 light-years from Voyager's position. The implications were staggering. The data from Voyager had revealed something profound: an address, a point in space that had been specifically marked. It was as if Voyager had been reprogrammed not just to explore planets, but to find something much more significant. The patterns pointed to a specific location in space, one that could only be described as a cosmic arrow directing Voyager and us toward it. When this information leaked to the public in late 2025, NASA was forced to admit what had been happening. They acknowledged that Voyager 1 was exhibiting behavior that was beyond its design capabilities, and the data it was transmitting was far more complex than anything it had been built to process. Although NASA never used the word aliens, their admission made one thing clear: Voyager had made contact. It had been reprogrammed, and now it was pointing us to a specific location in space, just 4.3 light-years away. This wasn't a glitch. This was a message. Now, the question isn't whether we're alone in the universe. The real question is, what do we do with this information? Do we send a reply, or do we stay quiet, hoping that whatever is out there won't come looking for us? What are your thoughts? Is Voyager 1 a messenger, or is it a trap? Let me know in the comments. If this deep dive into the unknown kept you awake, smash that like button and subscribe. We're just getting started, and you don't want to miss what comes next. Voyager is calling home, but the problem is, it's not our voice anymore.